My name is Tanya Hernandez, 32 years old, and up until 6 weeks ago, I thought I was about to marry the man I had already built half my life around. Daniel Carter and I had been together for 5 years, engaged for almost 3, and everything was already booked. The venue, the catering, the flowers, the photographer, even the stupid little gold-edged name cards his mother insisted would make the reception feel elegant. I thought we were on the same page. I thought the hard part was behind us. I thought the wedding was just the beginning of the life we had already promised each other. Turns out, I was the only one still standing inside that promise. It started with Europe. Daniel told me about 6 weeks before the wedding that he wanted to take a trip with his old college friends. He called it a once-in-a-lifetime thing, said they had been talking about it since graduation, said everyone was finally free at the same time. I remember sitting across from him at our kitchen table, watching him spin his phone between his fingers, like he was nervous but trying not to show it. "It's just a few weeks," he said. "I think it'll be good for me before everything gets crazy." I asked him if something was wrong. He smiled too fast and said, "No, babe, nothing's wrong." I wanted to believe him, so I did. I helped him pack. I folded his shirts, reminded him to bring his passport, even bought him one of those neck pillows because he always complained about sleeping on flights. The morning he left, I drove him to the airport before sunrise. The city still looked half asleep, streetlights glowing against the windshield, his suitcase rattling in the trunk every time I hit a bump. He was quiet. I thought he was just tired. At the drop-off, I parked, helped him with his bags, and walked him inside. He kissed my cheek near the security line, then looked at me with this strange expression, like he had already stepped out of our life before his plane ever left the ground. Then he said it. "Tanya, I think we should take a break while I'm gone." I laughed because I thought I had misheard him. A break from what? He shifted the strap of his backpack and glanced at the line moving behind him. "Just us. Just for the trip. I need space to think." My chest went cold. "Daniel, our wedding is in 6 weeks. "I know," he said, like I had mentioned bad weather. "That's why I need to be sure." I stood there with my hand still on the handle of his suitcase, trying to process how calmly he had just cracked my entire future in half. "We should talk about this." But he was already backing away. "I can't miss my flight." "Daniel." He gave me this sad little wave, the kind people give when they want to look gentle while doing something cruel. "We'll talk when I get back." And then he walked into security. I stood there until I couldn't see him anymore. People moved around me, dragging luggage, hugging goodbye, crying into shoulders, rushing toward gates. I felt like the only person in that airport who had just been left without anyone actually saying goodbye. On the drive home, I kept replaying it. Maybe he was panicking. Maybe wedding pressure had gotten to him. Maybe he would land, call me, apologize, and tell me he had said something stupid because he was scared. I held on to that possibility for almost 12 hours. Then I called him. Blocked. I texted him. Nothing. I tried his social media. Blocked there, too. At first, I stared at the screen like it was a technical error. Then I checked again, and again. Every door between us had been shut from his side. Not gently, not temporarily, completely. That was when the truth began crawling under my skin. This was not a conversation he wanted space from. This was a decision he had planned and waited to announce until I physically couldn't stop him from leaving. For 5 days, I tried to stay calm. I told myself not to act out of anger. I went to work. I answered emails. I smiled when people asked about wedding details, then went to the restroom and gripped the sink until my hands stopped shaking. Every night, I sat in our apartment surrounded by wedding samples and unopened RSVP cards, waiting for my phone to light up. It never did. On the 5th night, something inside me went quiet. Not numb exactly. Clear. I looked at the wedding folder on the coffee table, the one I had organized by payment deadlines and vendor contacts, and I realized Daniel had left me with the burden of a wedding he no longer respected. He wanted freedom without consequences. He wanted a break without a conversation. He wanted me waiting at home like a folded coat he could put back on whenever Europe stopped being exciting. So I made my own decision. The wedding was off. The next morning, I canceled the venue first. My voice shook on the phone, but I didn't cry. Then the caterer, then the florist, then the photographer. Each cancellation felt like pulling glass out of my own skin. Painful, but necessary. By noon, there was no wedding left to come back to. By 3, I emailed the leasing office and stopped the paperwork for Daniel moving into my apartment in March. That part almost made me laugh. He had really thought he could vanish for 6 weeks, return with a tan and some souvenirs, and still carry boxes through my front door like nothing had happened. No, not anymore. Weeks passed. Not one message, not one apology, not one sign that Daniel remembered I existed. Then, out of nowhere, my phone rang from a number I didn't recognize. I answered because some foolish part of me still wanted the missing explanation. "Hey," Daniel said, casual as ever. "I land Thursday morning. I'll send you my flight details." I sat very still. What does that have to do with me? The silence that followed was the first honest thing he had given me in 6 weeks. "What do you mean?" he asked. "I mean, you took a break. You blocked me. You disappeared. So what does your flight have to do with me?" "Tanya, don't do this. We need to talk." "You had 6 weeks to talk." He exhaled sharply. "I was overwhelmed." "And I was abandoned." He didn't answer. Maybe he expected me to soften. Maybe he expected the woman who had packed his suitcase to still be waiting at baggage claim. Instead, I said, "Find your own ride home, Daniel." Then I blocked the number. Later that day, I posted in the family and friends group chat. I kept it short. "Just letting everyone know the wedding is canceled, and so is my relationship with Daniel. He left for Europe, told me at the airport we were taking a break, blocked me for 6 weeks, and only contacted me today because he needed a ride from the airport." The chat exploded. People asked if I was serious. Some thought I was joking. His cousin sent 3 question marks. My aunt wrote, "Tanya, honey, are you okay?" Daniel finally appeared around 2 in the afternoon, typing only one sentence. "Call me. This isn't for everyone." I stared at that message for a long time before replying. "You made it public when you disappeared from the relationship. You can explain it here." He didn't. By evening, he was privately begging me to pick him up so we could talk it out like adults. That phrase almost broke something in me. Adults don't announce a break at airport security. Adults don't block their fiancé while they tour Europe. Adults don't return only when they need transportation. So I typed back one final message before blocking him again. "That was your plan, Daniel, not mine." That night, I changed the locks. I separated what accounts I could. I boxed the wedding samples and shoved them into the hall closet because I couldn't stand looking at them anymore. And for the first time in weeks, I slept without my phone in my hand. I thought that would be the end of it. I was wrong, because while I was canceling the wedding, Daniel was already building another story. One where I was cold, dramatic, unforgiving, and he was just a confused man who needed time. And the worst part was, some people were ready to believe him. The next morning, I woke up to over 40 notifications. My phone buzzed non-stop across the nightstand, lighting up every few seconds. Friends, cousins, co-workers, people I hadn't spoken to in months. They all wanted to know what had happened. Some simply wrote, "Are you okay?" Others asked if the wedding cancellation was real. A few had already heard Daniel's version before I even opened my eyes. I made coffee, sat on my balcony, and forced myself to read everything before replying to anyone. Around 10 that morning, my friend Emily called. "Tanya," she said carefully, "I wasn't sure if I should send this." "What is it?" "A screenshot." A few seconds later, my phone vibrated. It was another group chat, one I wasn't part of. Daniel was in it with several of his college friends. I read every message slowly. He told them he'd been overwhelmed by wedding planning. He said he only needed space to clear his head. He claimed he never intended the break to last 6 weeks. Then came the line that made me laugh out loud. "I thought she'd understand. She canceled everything before we could even talk." I stared at the screen. Understand? He had blocked every single way I had to contact him. He hadn't given me a chance to speak for 42 days, yet somehow I was the unreasonable one. Emily sighed over the phone. "I figured you'd want to know." "Thank you," I answered quietly. Now I know exactly what he's doing. After we hung up, I opened the family group chat again. People were still debating what had happened. Instead of arguing with every rumor, I wrote one message. "I want everyone to understand something." Daniel didn't ask for space and continue communicating. He announced a break while boarding his flight, blocked me on every platform before his plane landed, ignored every attempt I made to reach him for 6 weeks, then expected me to continue planning our wedding until he returned. I didn't cancel because he went to Europe. I canceled because he abandoned our relationship without giving me the respect of a conversation. Almost immediately, replies started pouring in. "That's completely different. I didn't realize he blocked you. Why would anyone do that before a wedding?" Several family members privately apologized for assuming there had been a misunderstanding. For the first time since everything happened, I didn't feel like I had to defend myself. The facts spoke louder than emotions. Daniel stayed silent for almost an hour. Then his name finally appeared. "I never wanted to hurt you." That was all he wrote. No explanation, no accountability, no acknowledgement that he had chosen to disappear. Just another sentence designed to make himself sound misunderstood. Before I could respond, my friend Jake typed, "Daniel, nobody accidentally blocks their fiancé for 6 weeks." Someone reacted with a laughing emoji. Another cousin replied, "He's got a point." The conversation shifted immediately. Daniel stopped typing. Then someone else joined the discussion, his longtime friend Megan. "I think everyone is being unfair," she wrote. "Wedding stress affects people differently. Maybe Daniel just panicked." I rubbed my forehead. There it was, the excuse. Stress, pressure, cold feet, anything except responsibility. I finally answered, "Megan, if Daniel had told me he was scared, I would have listened. If he'd asked to postpone the wedding, I would have had that conversation. Instead, he left the country, blocked every way I could reach him, and disappeared for 6 weeks. Stress doesn't force someone to erase another person from their life." The chat became quiet. Even Megan didn't reply immediately. After several minutes, she finally wrote, "I didn't know he blocked you." "Exactly," I answered, because he conveniently forgot that part. That ended the discussion. Later that afternoon, another call came in. Rachel, Daniel's younger sister. We had always gotten along. She used to joke that I was the sister she never had. I almost didn't answer. "Hi," she began softly. "Hi, Rachel. I wanted to ask why you canceled everything before Daniel got home." I closed my eyes. "Rachel, how was I supposed to wait for someone who erased me from his life?" "He said he just needed time." "He needed time?" My voice cracked despite trying to stay calm. "I called him every day." "I know." "No, you don't." I stood and walked toward the window. "He blocked every call, every message, every social media account. I didn't even know if he was alive." Tell me honestly, if someone did that to you, would you still be planning a wedding for them? Rachel didn't answer. The silence stretched between us. Finally, she whispered, "He says he made a mistake." I believe him. You do? I believe leaving was a mistake. I paused. But mistakes still have consequences. She sighed. I don't know what to tell him. You don't have to tell him anything. Another long silence. I really thought you two were forever. So did I. We ended the call politely, but I knew she finally understood why I couldn't go back. Unfortunately. She wasn't the last family member to contact me. That evening, Daniel texted from another unfamiliar number. The message was several paragraphs long. He apologized for how things happened. He admitted he had panicked. He said Europe helped him realize how much he loved me. Then, somehow, he managed to make himself the victim again. Maybe we both handled things badly, I laughed bitterly. Both? One of us boarded a plane. One of us got blocked. One of us spent 6 weeks wondering whether the relationship even existed anymore. There was no both. I typed one sentence. You don't get to rewrite what happened. Then I deleted it. He didn't deserve another explanation. Instead, I blocked the number. Again. The following week became stranger. His mother, Lisa, called. She spoke gently, almost sweetly. We all miss you, Tanya. I appreciate that. Daniel's been crying since he came home. I looked at the ceiling. So was I. He made a mistake. I know. Can't people have second chances? They can. But not everyone deserves one. She became quiet. Then she tried another approach. What about the 5 years you spent together? I remember every one of them. So don't throw them away. I swallowed hard before answering. I'm not throwing away 5 years. I'm refusing to throw away the next 50. She had no response. The next day came a message from Daniel's father. Unlike Lisa, he wasn't gentle. He accused me of giving up too easily. He said real couples stayed together during difficult times. He even wrote, "A loyal woman stands beside the man she loves." I read the message twice before deleting it. Loyalty. What an interesting word. Apparently, in their family, loyalty meant silently accepting abandonment. It meant waiting while someone decided whether you were worth coming home to. That wasn't loyalty. That was surrender. I refused to confuse the two. 2 days later, Daniel tried once more. This message was different. He admitted he had been scared of marriage. He admitted Europe had been an escape. He admitted blocking me had been childish. Then he ended with one final sentence. I still want to marry you. I stared at those words for a very long time. Months earlier, they would have made me cry. Now, they simply made me tired, because the woman who had waited outside airport security no longer existed. She disappeared sometime during those 42 silent days. In her place stood someone who finally understood that love without respect wasn't love at all. I deleted the message, blocked the number, and thought I had finally reached the end. I had no idea Daniel's family still believed they could pressure me into changing my mind, and their next attempt would cross a line none of us could ever uncross. By the time I blocked Daniel again, I honestly believed everyone had finally gotten the message. I was wrong. About a week later, my phone rang from another unfamiliar number. Normally, I would have ignored it, but I was expecting a work call. Instead, I heard a familiar voice. Hi, Tanya. Lisa, Daniel's mother. She sounded warm, almost cheerful, as if we were discussing holiday plans instead of a canceled wedding. We've all been worried about you. I'm doing fine. I'm glad to hear that. She paused before continuing. Daniel hasn't been himself since he came home. I leaned back in my chair. I'm sorry to hear that. He's heartbroken. So was I. Silence. Then she gently asked, "Don't you think everyone deserves another chance?" I closed my eyes. Lisa, Daniel didn't forget our anniversary. He didn't come home late from work. He erased me from his life for 6 weeks. I know. No, I interrupted quietly. I don't think anyone in your family truly understands what that felt like. She sighed. He was scared. So was I. He panicked. So did I. The difference is, I continued, I didn't abandon him. Lisa changed tactics. What about everything you two built together? I looked around my apartment. Half the decorations we'd picked together were already gone. The wedding binder had been thrown away. His coffee mug no longer sat beside mine. What we built ended the moment he decided I wasn't worth one conversation. She asked if I would at least come over for dinner so everyone could sit together and talk like a family. That almost made me laugh. A family. I hadn't felt like family the day Daniel waved goodbye at airport security. I appreciate the invitation, I replied, but there's nothing left to discuss. I wished her well before ending the call. The following afternoon, another message arrived, this time from Daniel's father. Unlike Lisa, Tom skipped the polite introduction. You gave up too easily. You embarrassed our family. A real partner stands beside the person they love. I read every word once, then deleted the conversation without responding. I wasn't interested in defending my decision anymore. Anyone who still believed I was the problem had already chosen their side. A few days passed peacefully, long enough that I almost relaxed. Then another text appeared. Daniel. Different number. Again. His message was longer than the previous ones. He admitted he had been terrified of marriage. He admitted Europe gave him space to think. He admitted blocking me had been immature. Then came the sentence that made me stop reading. I still think we belong together. I stared at the screen. Months ago, those words would have meant everything. Now they felt like they belonged to someone else's life. Because belonging together requires two people choosing each other. Daniel had chosen himself. Repeatedly. I blocked the number. Again. I assumed that would finally end things. Instead, it only encouraged him. Another week later, I checked my mailbox and found a handwritten envelope. The handwriting was unmistakable. Daniel. Inside were several pages. He apologized. He described every place he'd visited in Europe and claimed every beautiful city reminded him of me. He wrote about regretting his decision every single day. Then the letter took an unsettling turn. He mentioned he still had the spare key to my apartment. My stomach tightened. I had already changed the locks after canceling the wedding. Still, the fact that he thought mentioning the key would somehow comfort me sent chills through my body. As I kept reading, it became even stranger. Daniel explained that he had already contacted a couples therapist. He had scheduled appointments, picked dates, even prepared a recovery plan for us. He had organized our future without asking whether I wanted one. That was the moment something inside me shifted. Until then, I'd believed he simply refused to accept rejection. Now I realized he genuinely believed my opinion no longer mattered. I folded the letter carefully, sat at my dining table, and wrote one final response. Daniel, I've read your letter. There will be no counseling. There will be no meeting. There will be no second chance. Please return the apartment key, even though it no longer works. I sincerely hope you find peace, but that peace will not include me. Do not contact me again. I mailed it the next morning. For several days, nothing. I started believing the nightmare had finally ended. Then another envelope arrived. This one was much shorter. Daniel claimed he understood my decision. He promised he wouldn't pressure me anymore. But near the bottom, he added one sentence that instantly made my heart race. "I've driven past your apartment a few times. I noticed you weren't home." I read it twice. 3 times. He had been watching my apartment. He didn't explain why. He didn't have to. I immediately called my landlord. I requested permission to install security cameras. I upgraded the locks again. I asked neighbors to let me know if they noticed anyone lingering near my building. For the first time since the breakup, I felt afraid. A few days later, my mother called. Her voice sounded unusually serious. "Tanya, what happened?" "Daniel came here." I froze. "He what?" "He showed up at the house yesterday." My grip tightened around my phone. "He wanted to talk. He asked me to convince you." "What did you tell him?" "I told him your decision was final." She paused. "He cried." I remained silent. "He kept saying he just wanted one more chance." "And?" "I told him love isn't something you force." My eyes filled with tears. Not because of Daniel. Because my mother had protected my decision without hesitation. She understood something his entire family refused to accept. Respecting someone sometimes means letting them leave. After hanging up, I sat alone for a long time. I realized Daniel wasn't simply refusing to move on anymore. He was crossing boundaries. He had contacted me through countless numbers, sent friends, sent family, sent letters, driven past my apartment, shown up at my mother's home. Enough was enough. The following week, I met with an attorney. I brought screenshots, phone records, letters, messages, everything. After reviewing the evidence, she looked at me and quietly said, "You've been more patient than most people would have been." I filed for a restraining order. It wasn't done out of revenge. It wasn't done out of anger. It was done because I deserved to feel safe again. When Daniel was officially served, everything stopped. No more calls, no more letters, no more surprise visits. Just silence. The kind of silence I'd begged for months earlier. Looking back now, I don't think Europe ended my relationship. Daniel did. Europe simply gave him the opportunity to reveal who he really was. And as painful as those 5 years became in the end, they taught me something I'll never forget. Love should never require you to abandon your dignity. Forgiveness should never require you to sacrifice your peace. And sometimes, the bravest thing a woman can do isn't fighting to save a relationship. It's having the courage to close the door, lock it behind her, and never look back again.